Hi, everybody. I have such a special guest today, Dr. Elizabeth Bright. I learned about her early in my journey. Honestly, before I even started carnivore, a friend of mine had her incredible book and had told me about this and had said that every woman needs to read this book. And she was so passionate. And so I started following Dr. Bright on Instagram, learning about the importance of fat, learning the science behind all of the recommendations that she has for women, empowering women, and was able to actually led a book study on this at one point in a community that I'm involved in. Anyhow, this is just so fun. I got to see you at KetoCon this year and eat meat
That was
together.
fun.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Bright. I'm so happy to have
Thank you
this.
for having me.
Fantastic. Oh, so we were just talking about new developments, things that are happening in your life, new skills that you're acquiring. So what have you been up to
Old
lately?
skills of
Oh,
grandmothering for me is a step off from mothering. So the rock and the stroller thing is an old skill.
yes. Did your babies do that too?
Yeah, my older daughter was colicky in the beginning, so the door jam, the bumping the stroller over the door jam helped tremendously with her. And then trains, God, old trains in Europe, just they would always sleep so well on trains. But the chicka 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 chicka.
Uh-huh. These calming things, right? And it makes me wonder too, like when we're in our adult worlds, it reminds me of like waves of water, things that
Right.
have
Yeah.
rhythm to them that have this like,
Rhythm. Yeah. Parasympathetic state puts you into rhythm, puts you in a parasympathetic state.
wow, beautiful. Okay, tell my listeners a little bit about your background, experience, education, what you where you're coming from here.
Okay. Well, I'm an osteopath and then I went back to school, back to university to learn naturopathy because my patients, women of a certain age, would come back. So I would adjust them, manipulate them, alignment issues and things, but I saw a lot of tissue congestion. And as osteopaths, we're taught how to, hand treat tissue congestion, but it's due to inflammation. So I wasn't the soccer boys who got hurt or whatever, the people who fell off of horses who came back, because it was easy to adjust them and they were okay. But women in their 40s kept coming back with issues. So I decided that this was very frustrating to me, even though I could say, yeah, I just come every 2 weeks and have a treatment. I didn't want that. I wanted to fix them. So I went back to school, and luckily I was able to specialize in endocrinology, specifically thyroid, when I went back to school. And that was a really big change for me, because I saw a lot of stuff in my own family and my parents, and my family's from Tennessee. I'm not from Tennessee, but the goiter belt. So the thyroid sort of really a lot of eureka moments for me when I got into that. And osteopathy and naturopathy are both systems that remove the obstacle to the body's natural ability to heal. So you're not blocking the symptoms that the body is trying to express to you that it has a deficiency or needs something. But with medicines, you're actually removing obstacles. So they really work well together.
Beautiful. And was your training and education in line, knowing what you know now? You've been on a journey of knowledge where things have shifted and opened up and opened up.
Oh, yeah.
And now, was it fairly in line, or were there some issues in the actual school that you had to unlearn?
The people that I was working with were ketogenic, so already ketogenic. Today, I would say, this was many years ago, today, all naturopathic schools, this was in the UK, are plant-based. So unfortunately, naturopathy now is driving towards, or is very much a plant-based. And there's a lot of supplements, lots of supplements, and that wasn't anything I was into. So that was a shift for me to the carnivore diet. Really was the shift, because you don't need to supplement the carnivore diet. So that sort of took care of that. So yeah, that was a big learning step for me to become carnivore and use that as my treatment modality.
And how did that happen?
Well, that happened because I was specializing in thyroid function, and I came across some of Amber O'Hearn's articles on T3, and just a light went off. So I, at the same time, went into menopause, and I didn't really have any symptoms, but I put on a couple of pounds, and I was horrified what I saw about how menopause was described, because I was like, that's not me. That I don't see this happening. My, my bones are going to break, my brain's going to go, my et cetera, et cetera. So I just started researching that. And then that's when the high fat came in. So carnivore turned into high fat through my research.
Amazing. And that, I think so many people through their experience. I've just been watching the Reverse series come out, and we did a lot of fat versus protein
Yeah.
kind of it's so much. So that was the big controversy. We had two coaches who were kind of team protein, and the rest of us had landed into high fat carnivore. And for me, it was just how I felt. That's what got me on that road. But having your book and understanding why that was,
Why? Yeah.
oh my goodness. Well, let's give an overview. Why is fat so important?
Because it makes your brain, and it makes all your steroid hormones. So, I mean, if you look at the steroid hormone cascade, cholesterol, which is only animal fat, they're all made from cholesterol. All our steroid hormones are made from cholesterol. So the interesting thing in between each hormone, if you look at the hormone cascade, you start with cholesterol, you go to pregnenolone, and down the line on the left side, you have the cortisol, aldosterone, which is basically the immune system and the stress response. On the right side, you have the sex steroids. So testosterone, progesterone, testosterone, estradiol, estrone. You can't make enough of those if you don't eat animal fat. And you can't regulate the aromatization of turning one hormone into the other without having adequate thyroid function.
Love it.
So that is, that was just huge for me. So I just changed how I ate because I was 52, went into menopause. And so I've been eating this way for 8 years. I'm 60 now.
Awesome. I'm 50. I just turned 52. That's such good news for me to hear. I turned carnivore when I was 49. So I'm almost to 3 years carnivore, have been high fat for most of the part. I dabbled for a little bit in kind of a leaner approach. And I could feel adrenaline in my system when I with that approach. I was combining it with probably a ton of walking, jogging, a little bit of strength training. So this is a normal, I guess, road that women try, but when I am coaching, I try to veer them off of that because of how that made me
Oh, yeah.
feel. Oh, yeah.
Adrenaline. The thing about adrenaline is that we have to make energy. We wake up in the morning, we're supposed to wake up with a good amount of energy because that's when our cortisol levels are supposed to be higher. But throughout the day, they're supposed to go down to reach a nadir at about, 8 o'clock at night, or 7, 8 o'clock at night, when melatonin is supposed to be produced. So people who exercise at night are totally messing everything up. And so I did that. I over-exercised for a long time. And that's really something that has to be, anything that causes adrenaline is going to provoke a stress response in the body.
Absolutely. It turned out to not be sustainable, and I just didn't feel good. And so when we're kind of having these discussions of enough of this and enough of that, it's like your body really responds to, getting behind on that. And what's interesting is all of the issues that you're telling me about fat and protein, we need enough of both, right? And so, but when people say this term nutrient dense, for some reason, they think that applies to that protein. Yeah, is the nutrient dense, and that fat is the energy dense when they say energy. And so what's going on?
Fat soluble vitamins all come from fat, though. So D3 is in its perfect form is an animal fat. K2 in its perfect form is an animal fat. So why everybody is supplementing with 10,000 IUs of D and K2. they should only be getting it from animal fat, because your body will always prefer the most bioavailable version, which is the natural one. We evolved to get these fat soluble vitamins from fat, not from supplements. So I would say that, yes, fat, we're making energy out of ketones. So that's the energy part, but we're also getting nutrients in the form of fat soluble vitamins, and it's anti-inflammatory.
I have a question that a client just posed to me today, and she said, when someone is in a fat loss mode, or, for whatever reason, they're kind of burning a lot of their own body fat, does the body fat that you burn also have components of these things that we're talking about with the cofactors and the, all the wonderful things that when we
But
eat,
you're over running out of it, you mean? You're running out of vitamin D, you mean?
that's
Because
what I'm
you're eating body
wondering.
fat?
So that so her question had to do with this, like, can we get a lot of those nutrients? We know actually that fat that we eat, animal fat, is nutrient dense, and it helps with all of these precursors, and it develops these cofactors. And so her question was, does our own fat, as it's getting metabolized, have those features? Does that make sense what my question is?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think you think of actually toxins are usually stored in fat. All the fake hormones that people are taking are stored in fat. Metabolites that your body's trying to get rid of are stored in fat. So you're actually doing a detox while you're burning the fat. You're eating the nutrients, and then burning of the fat is a detox.
This is this actually blows my mind. I'm so happy that I asked this question. And so what I'm hearing is that from an energy perspective, sure, that when the body's in a fat burning mode, that there's going to be some energy released as part of that process.
You got to keep eating the fat.
Yes, but you have to be eating. You have to have both. Okay,
right.
Exactly. And can you explain a little bit more about how eating the fat helps to burn the fat?
Well, because you're in, okay, so we can't make energy out of protein. The body hates making energy out of protein. It can only use metabolizing, right? We're talking about metabolism, making ATP it's done by glycolysis, or it's done by ketosis. So protein is the least, is not what the body's looking for to burn, because that's in the starvation state. You're basically cannibalizing yourself. So that when people are transitioning from, say, a carbohydrate diet to a ketotic diet, or I would say I always ramp up the fat, because that transition phase is very uncomfortable, because the body's like, okay, the sugar's gone. What do I make energy out of? If you don't have enough fat, you won't be able to make the energy, because it'll see the protein, but it'll say, I don't want to make energy out of that. I want to make energy out of fat. So, so I think that the transition is important. And I think that when your liver's always making fat, though. So cholesterol is obviously making fat, but there's not enough of it to go around to make all the steroid hormones, to make all the myelin sheaths that cover your neurons, and to make the brain, to regenerate the fat tissue of the brain. So you have to eat fat.
I love it. And how does fat help people if they want to add muscle and get stronger? How does that impact that?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely, I mean, I just put a post. I mean, I don't post much, but I did put a post comparing how I just went back to the gym, because I couldn't paddleboard much. I mean, I was paddleboarding, but added some gym into it, muscle building, weight resistance exercises, in order to paddle stronger, because you use a lot of core and balance and leg work in paddling, because otherwise the waves tip you over. So I just in a month built, boom, 3 kilos of muscle. I hadn't changed how I eat. I did not change my ratio. So I think that obviously it proved to me that I at 60 could build plenty of muscle just by doing the resistance exercises and still eating high fat.
Absolutely. The stimulus that you're getting from that portion of the training that you're doing there wasn't an issue to get that going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've heard it described as even structurally with muscles that, there's membranes around them that are made out of fat, the cell walls.
That's why I like diaphragm so much, because my best jerky comes from diaphragm. It's covered in a membrane of fat.
Oh my gosh. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. I'm going to go just through questions that I have jotted down. Was it difficult for you? We've already established you've been a carnivore for 8 years. Oh
Yeah.
was it difficult? And did you have doubts and concerns when you started on that path?
No, something clicked. So something clicked, and I had remembered when I decided to go carnivore, I remember that there was a time in my 30s where I always had indigestion, or rather I got bloated. And the only thing that made me not get bloated was just meat. So I was basically just eating, I was still in the US and I was just eating meat for 2 weeks and I didn't bloat. And then of course I was training a lot, I was teaching a lot of Kung Fu at night. And I just went back to stupidly, trying to figure out how to improve my stamina, not eating fat, obviously, I mean, I ate some fat, but I didn't focus on it. And I just went back to eating normally, right? Lots of vegetables and things like that. So I remembered that. And with my research, I realized that no, I had just did it like that. And I remembered cutting all those vegetables and all the waste and having to go to the market every day, living in Italy, you go every day to the vegetable, the greengrocer and get, and I was like, why? That's not necessary. So very easy.
It's so simplifying. Yeah, it's like
Yes.
I love it. I was out, we just were, the fridge was out of food or whatever. And yeah, I was just at the grocery store. What meat is on sale? I brought home 3 different types of meats. I'm like, there's dinner and got the markdowns. I'm like, this will work. Have you come across anyone or any conditions that should not try an all meat diet?
Well, okay. So I did have lunch with Sally K. Norton and Judy and Lisa Weidman in Austin.
Yes.
She has her concerns about, oxalate dumping, and that some people will have so many issues with oxalate dumping if they go carnivore. I have not encountered that at all. This may be an issue for some people, but I really personally haven't encountered it. But I think that if it's as simple as adding squeezing a lemon, which has citrate and vitamin C, if that, prevents the issue, then I don't see that is a huge deal to add some lemon if that's something you're really concerned about.
Absolutely. She's such an incredible resource. And we've taken in our groups lots of advice from her about the lemon or sometimes citric acid or even a black tea, something to kind of
Well, the
mitigate.
tea, I would say no, because it's bad for the thyroid.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're much safer with
Tea plants all grow in fluoride-rich soil. So green tea, black tea, I'm not talking about passion flower tea, but any tea, Indian tea, Chinese tea, all tea grows in fluoride-rich soil, and that is just very detrimental to thyroid function because it's knocking out the iodine. It prevents iodine absorption.
And is coffee similar on that realm?
No, coffee's not.
Okay.
No.
Wow. So from a thyroid perspective, tea is a much worse.
Terrible. Tea is terrible.
Anything else that you typically will see most of my audience is carnivores. Any other things that are doing in the diet that people will include that is damaging thyroid?
Well, I take out stimulants. So and originally, in the initial protocol, I'll take out all stimulants. That means alcohol, caffeinated coffee, sugar, obviously. I see supplementation that could be damaging. What they call adaptogens are not adaptogens. They're all stimulants. So ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea, ginseng, blah, blah, blah. Those things are actually ramping you up. Cannabis, CBD, those things are all detrimental because you are affecting your Gaba, and it's more of a cortisol adrenal issue, but eventually, because thyroid and adrenal function are so attached, they're so connected that could eventually damage thyroid function.
I am so glad you brought that up because people are used to thinking that if it's orange and in a powder and in a pill, a turmeric, a curcumin, and it's supplement.
Oh, God. So I have looked up all of the spices. I have, patients from the Middle East, and this is a huge issue with them because they are used to eating meat, but they're used to eating meat with a lot of spices. And spices are medicinal. Cardamom is a stimulant, chilies are a stimulant, cinnamon is a stimulant, vanilla is an opiate. It just goes, people, when I lived in China, you go to the pharmacy, you get a pill the size of your fist, and it was just filled with tree sap and plants and spices, and because it's a medicine. My whole point is that you need to remove the medicines in order to heal.
Absolutely. And I'm excited. I know what you're going to say, so but I'm going to ask it anyways. Are there some that you feel that are important? I know the main one that we're going to talk about. And then are there any others that you do see helpful on a 100% carnivore approach?
I'm sorry, supplements?
Mm-hmm.
Salt?
Okay. Gotcha.
No, yeah, I don't, a supplement by definition is supplementing a deficient diet.
That's right.
The carnivore diet is not deficient. So people invented supplements to supplement people who could not afford, or have access to good food. That is the invention of supplements. So if we're on a good diet, why do we need a supplement? If you can't digest it, if you cannot, for instance, if your gut can't break down the meat and the fat into what we need it broken down into, that's often what I see in people with thyroid issues. They're missing the digestive mechanics to turn because you carbohydrate, it hits your saliva, boom, it's metabolized because it's like nothing to it, right? But the meat and the fat have to go into our stomach. They have to be broken down by hydrochloric acid, all the enzymes. And some people are definitely deficient in that. So I might, in a transition phase, add those digestive mechanics until they are replenished, because the body makes all those things on its own.
Okay, so there's can be some temporary helpers with digestion that sometimes come in. And then why is it that on a carnivore diet that some people might want to look at including some iodine? And I, just want to get into that a little bit.
Oh, well, because iodine, we don't have any sources that's not in our meat. We just don't, there are no sources for iodine, and there are no food sources for iodine. Kelp is inadequate, and the seas are polluted. So there's mercury in kelp and seaweed. So you can't use the amount you can't get the iodine from these sea sources anymore. It's much better to get it from Lugol's, Lugol solution, because that gives you a form factor that you can know how much you need if you're working with a practitioner. And the other, I think that probably goiter belts, we know Tennessee, where my family's from, is a goiter belt. Minnesota is a goiter belt. Switzerland was certainly a goiter belt. There are areas in the world that didn't have iodine in the soil, so the cows weren't eating it. Like Australia doesn't have selenium in the soil, selenium, right? Because there's the soil, the minerals in the soil don't get into the animals. But nowadays, the whole world is a goiter belt because of fluoride, bromide, and chloride, phthalates, these supplements that interfere with the absorption of iodine. So that's why people need to supplement. So yes, you're right. I do recommend that. It's like food, so I don't even think
that's right. Yeah, you don't count it as a supplement. It's like, okay, there's one that I think we're going to touch on.
Yeah.
And then, and this was interesting that you brought up this thing about selenium. And so are folks in other regions, are they finding that they'll need to use supplement with some selenium, or?
I haven't seen it that much. I think that, so if you're able to eat, a lot of people have issues with egg white, but very rarely do they have issues with egg yolk. So egg yolk and meat, if you eat 4 egg yolk a day, you're getting the amount of selenium that you would get from a supplement. And a supplement is always going to be obviously less bioavailable, because the body's not going to recognize it as a food, right? And then selenium is easily toxic. It's very easily toxic.
Wow. And I that reminds me of nuts, because I think that
Brazil nuts.
Yes. I used to have an addiction to nuts and all kinds of carby foods. And I had this little jar of Brazil nuts. And I'm like, oh, I'm just taking my daily dose of selenium.
Right. Yes. That's what people are told, because they're not addressing thyroid issues. There are always this whole thing now with, just take selenium, take 100 micrograms of selenium, and that's what you need, because it's not enough.
Wow. So what changes did you experience in your health, but from 8 years carnivore?
Um, I would just say that, well, my mother has had Alzheimer's, so I have absolutely don't want to get Alzheimer's. Other than that, I would say that at 60, I have more energy and more mental clarity than I did at 50. I can go paddleboarding. I mean, I have definitely ramped down my working out because I did have an adrenal burnout after lots of training and fighting and tournaments and things like that I did with Kung Fu. So, but man, I'm out there paddling and I'm working and I'm feeling great. So to me, it's working.
Energy is good, activity is
Yes.
good. And
Yes.
yeah, we've all seen the athleticism that comes together. Like and wow, you just put on additional muscle. You're like, I'm just going to go to the gym for a little bit. Boom, your
Yeah.
body ready to get that
Yeah.
on.
And I calculated I was doing 76, 78 fat to whatever
Yeah.
protein, when
Okay.
I did that. I was really surprised. And then I calculated it because I was like, whoa, just a month, boom, 3 kilos in muscle.
Dang. And that was on a 70, 80, high 70 approach with what you were.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that that's where so many people end up with that. How many women are affected by adrenal fatigue? Is it something that affects women of all different sizes? And is this affect men as well?
Yes, today, yes.
Okay.
Women need more fat. Women
Mhm.
definitely need more fat. I would usually put men on 70-30. Women need more fat because we have, okay, so uh, issues usually start in adolescence.
Mhm.
In adolescence, in the preteen state, your body starts to need 40% more iodine and 40% more thyroid to build sexual characteristics. Sexual characteristics are built by thyroid hormone. So women build more stuff when they're adolescents. There's a much more of a need for fat during this time. All
Mhm.
these hormones are just ramped up in order to get you to from a preteen to an adolescent. That's a fertile person once you get your period, once you get your cycle.
Mhm.
So the adrenal fatigue, the thyroid issues can start in adolescence because they're not getting 40% more thyroid hormone and 40% more iodine. They usually stop. I did stop eating. I stopped eating at 15. Definitely didn't eat any fat. Avoid fat like the plague. And that really sets you up for the rest of your life. That
Mhm.
will dictate how your menopause is.
Wow. Okay. So when you look at your adolescent transition, then when you're going through menopause, it's almost some kind of a similar transition.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
Well, yes, I would say that the fat is so necessary during adolescence, but it never stops being necessary because women are fertile. They keep making the body by default is thinking reproduction.
Mhm.
So all the ducks have to be in a row just in case
Mhm.
you fertilize an egg. But
Mhm.
all of those hormones are mostly coming from the adrenal glands. So if you're running like a crazy person like I did,
Mhm.
fasting like a crazy person like I did, you won't be able to have enough of those hormones.
Mhm. It's
And
like
that
it
will
builds.
set you up for adrenal fatigue in the future, which is what any menopausal symptom is basically adrenal fatigue.
Oh, wow, that's huge. Okay, and I know that, and I've read this, but to hear you say it, like that's
Well, okay, so if we say adrenal fatigue, the adrenals don't get tired. The adrenals are told by the brain to stop making cortisol because the person has had high cortisol levels for so long. DHEA tries to push the cortisol down because high cortisol is degenerative. High cortisol is turn bones into powder, burn brain neurons. The body will not allow you to have cortisol high levels for a long time. So first DHEA goes up and goes down to try to push that cortisol down. And then finally the pituitary just stops, the ACTH stops telling the adrenals to make cortisol just so that you're not in this constant inflamed state.
Yep.
So it's not that the adrenals aren't working. It's really hard tissue. It's not like thyroid tissue, which is rather delicate. they're told not to make any more hormone. So then people have this teeny tiny stress reserve. And the weird thing is that adrenal high cortisol feels almost like low cortisol because you're going nuts because the tiniest thing you're overreacting to it, not just getting upset and hangry, but you're also your immune system's not acting right. Your immune system doesn't have the ability to respond to even toxic stressors.
It's a cascade and it's an unrest and things are feeling very unsafe. The way that I think of it is when we increase the animal fats, there's just a safety that happens in the body. It's like things are like you kind of get the green light that things can flow again, right?
Yes, you're giving you're increasing, you're giving the raw material to make the cortisol in the first place. Eating fat is anti-inflammatory, so you're already telling the ACTA, the pituitary, hey, there's no more inflammation here. We can make cortisol again.
So when people are talking about master hormones, I read a bunch of different books, and some people say insulin's the master hormone. Some will say oxytocin is the master hormone.
Thyroid.
Okay, thank you.
Thyroid.
Okay.
Thyroid is the master hormone. It is the first hormone so the fetus, the first gland formed right at the same time that the neural tube is formed is the thyroid gland.
Control
and
central.
the fetus grows out from the thyroid gland. The thyroid is a growth hormone. It grows the body. So the first hormone that we made as mammals was thyroid hormone.
Wow.
Vertebrates.
Wow. It's incredible. Yeah. And so I do want to hear about oxytocin as well. And how does that play in? And does fat, is it instrumental in that one?
Yes, I think that and allopregnanolone, which is what they're actually trying to turn into a pill for depression, because oxytocin and allopregnanolone are part of the Gaba system. So it's calming. You know, that the GABA receptors. So you have GABA, which is calming, glutamate, which is excitatory. And that whole GABA system needs to be with our stress levels and our light pollution and all the stuff we do, our CBD and our benzos and our hypertension medication. They all mess up the GABA system.
It's impeded by everything that's coming in. Wow. Okay. So when we're talking about healing hormones, where obviously thyroid is where it's at, diet is where it's at. What are some of the other factors that goes into smooth hormonal transitions?
Transitioning from?
I was actually thinking about the two, thinking about the women's two transitions, the adolescence and the menopause.
Thyroid, iodine, and I think for menopausal women, fat is probably crucial, but it's also crucial for adolescents. So it's not like you're building anything when you're becoming menopausal, but you are no longer fertile. You're just stopping fertility. So if you've dieted and overexercised and been stressed until you're no longer fertile, there's that tipping point. The adrenals have been making 85% of the hormones all this time. The little bit that the ovaries make is really just for fertility. But if that little bit could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Oh, I see.
So that's why the high fat.
End all be all of like, oh my gosh, your ovaries they're not doing their thing anymore. And so it makes it.
That's why they invented synthetic hormones for women who were born without ovaries, only so they could be fertile, not because of, and then they saw women who had oophorectomies and hysterectomies had like women who had these horrific operations in their 30s, right? So yeah, what got them there in the first place, there was obviously an issue, right? So if you have uterine fibroids, they're going to say you got to take your uterus out, even though that's because you're iodine deficient. But the menopause is just naturally an evolutionary mechanism that makes us live until we're 100, so we can be grandmothers. Nothing bad is supposed to happen. But if we've avoided animal fat all our life, then yeah, you might
Right.
have a
That
rough
could be the tipping point that gets us on the whole road of pharma's procedures, all these sorts of things. And so it's really this kind of an issue that happens, but it's not an incredibly difficult fix to get that to be.
No,
Yeah,
that's what's so beautiful about the high fat carnivore diet.
absolutely. No, I love it. And it's a joy. And in our communities, we've seen women that actually get their cycles back when they're kind of in that in-between phase. So that's kind of an interesting, they're not always thrilled about that.
No, yeah. Why would you want it back? Well, why? I mean, if you want it there, okay, it's different if you're in your 40s and you have precocious menopause, and there are patients who want to get pregnant when they're also in their 40s, right? So I don't, want them not to be able to have that, but you shouldn't be menopause. You shouldn't lose your period in your 30s and 40s. There's something wrong. There's definitely something wrong. You need iodine and check out your thyroid, and definitely eat a lot of fat. But in your 50s, no. Our body said that's why women evolved. Chimpanzees get pregnant into their 50s and they die at 50. Women live to be very, very old. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason for us to have our history, our memories, our passing it down so that the grandchildren thrive.
Absolutely. It's a timed programmed that is not a bad thing. And if the diet's on point, and if the diet's in a supportive environment, it doesn't have to be this torturous experience.
No, absolutely not.
Amazing.
It's supposed to be a good experience. That's what, my chapter in my book is menopause is a good thing. We evolved to have it as a benefit to us.
Yes, absolutely. Amazing. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to go through these. I want to hear what your thoughts are on sustainability of carnivore in different cultures, societies. What are some steps that you think that populations can make to get this moving in a better direction?
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, I live in Italy where the rate, has the highest rate of juvenile diabetes in southern Italy, because of the diet. So the obesity that we see in the US, yes, all being treated with insulin. Got little kids. So, and I have patients all over the world, and I've come into, as I said before, the whole thing of spices and traditions. And we know that women have never gotten enough meat. Humans have always eaten meat, but it's since the advent of agriculture that women started getting the grain and men got the meat. Women would have 12 kids and be malnourished, and the men got the meat. So that is what we have to, the message we have to promote is that women need the meat. The iron deficiency is global in women and children. Why in children? Because the women nurse the children and they don't have enough iron. The women never get the meat. I've studied this pretty extensively. Africa, everywhere, the Middle East, Europe. I mean, women are supposed to be delicate and avoid meat. I put that picture of me eating a bone because women are supposed to be dainty, and they're supposed to we're not even supposed to see us chew in the Victorian era. So men get meat. Men, the whole thing with the steroids in animals started because during the war, they didn't want to give steroids to livestock, but then they had to ration the meat in the US, and they wanted to make sure that the soldiers got enough meat so they could fight, right? And the meat had to be bigger. They had to be bigger beef. So they jacked them up with steroids at that time to, because meat makes you strong. So why shouldn't women be strong?
Wow, that's phenomenal. Wow.
We have to set the example. That's really the only way we can. It's very hard in countries where they live on yams and millet, for instance, and that's what women are eating. The men are eating, I looked up, bush meat, wild animals in Africa, men get that, women don't get it.
That's phenomenal. And so even in certain areas where, obviously there's not this piece of a global understanding or a medical understanding of how important it is, you see it in the culture. And so it's
Yeah.
clear in the culture that how significant that is to have the meat be part of that. And that's one of the main places you can see it is who's the one that gets it.
Yes, yes. I remember that the huge iron deficiency they had in certain parts of Africa, and they would put cast iron fish into the soups, into the stews, which were all grain, right? Because that iron came from the iron for their diet came from these little cast iron fish that they would add, but because they weren't getting meat. So the women and the children don't get meat.
Wow. That's atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. What do you think in terms of like, I know I hear you saying we're setting the example, and do you see any hope on like policy types of things, or those things that, are something you think about? Or
Well, that's hard for me. I live in Italy, so I'm not, so right now I am against the current government that we have, but it is also the government that is supporting the traditional meat production, whereas the previous government was, the usual European, we have to reduce methane and kill the cows and that kind of thing. So, I mean, nobody's saying it, but it's definitely since the Lancet report, Europe has tried to emphasize that we should be eating more plants, just like the rest of the world, whereas the current government in Italy has stepped back from that.
okay,
But I hate the current government. It's a pest.
right.
So, it's kind of hard. It's really hard to creepily to be in agreement with this issue, and then every issue be in disagreement.
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Can we just take this one piece and say, this is what we keep, and the rest of it is garbage?
Yeah.
Wow. So I was just looking through some questions I had. What are some other cornerstones of health? I know we've talked about high fat, iodine. I'm not sure what else we've touched on. Meat, carnivore, getting the carbs out. Any other cornerstones that come to mind for you?
Stuff yourself with fat, reduce stress, get enough sleep. Don't keep up with the Joneses. Think of more what is good for you and not what you see on social media or what anybody else is doing, because you can only fix you.
We have to redefine our success. We have to make sure that our success lines up with our priorities. And it's true.
We recalibrate expectations too, because a lot of healing yourself and reducing cortisol levels is, we were talking about this the other day, American societies go, 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 push, 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 get up and go to the gym at 4 a.m. so you can get to it's obviously it's different in Europe because you have these 2-hour lunches, and some people swim, some people ride their bikes, some people sit on their ass and watch TV, but it's an older culture that you can't change. And America's been really cool for that and has this amazing culture because of that. Push, 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 go, go, go. But the downside is that people lose track of themselves. There's a lot of anxiety and tension and unhappiness.
It has to do with our pacing and these expectations of pacing and comparing ourselves to, we look around and see the other people. Oh, I love that message. We got to slow down that pace for sure. Okay. You were talking about the process and how long it takes. Because I have this question about, BMI, body fat calculators, scale. Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
I'm not a number. Since I did the research on the FRAX and the DEXA scans, all those statistics are rigged. So I wouldn't ever ask anybody to, you have to, it's how you feel. That's important. The DEXA scans, the FRAX, and the BMI, they're using statistics so if you're a 50-year-old woman getting a DEXA scan, they're measuring your bone density and compare using the parameters for a 30-year-old, for a 50-year-old, and a 60-year-old. So you're going to take the medication. So you're going to go back several times to do the scan. And it's just rigged. So I don't really go, I don't recommend any of that.
Beautiful. How do you help people on their body journey? You obviously, like a lot of your clients are having one consequence of how they've been eating or what they've been doing is maybe their body's a shape that they're not thrilled about and they're wanting that, a different shape, right? How do you encourage them in that? Does that happen? How do people deal with that journey mentally?
I think that it can take a very long time to heal decades of cortisol abuse. So I think that focusing on the small improvements and the steps, it is a step, one by one, you get there eventually. How you feel, if you feel great, then you'll get there. Excess weight is your body's attempt to make up for an imbalance or a deficiency. That's all it is. It's either inflammatory or your body's in danger and it feels you have to have extra energy to run away from danger. It has to keep energy for you to be able to heal. These are all parts that the body has to go through in order for you to get to the other side.
Oh, that's beautiful. And do you, I know we don't like timelines. And so, how do you get people disengaged from the concept of timeline? How long will it take?
I just tell them as long as it takes, I guess, Like
Yeah.
we usually have pretty quick improvements. So, and how they feel. So
Yes.
just that gets you on to feeling, oh yeah, I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
People always see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Good, good. Focus on how you feel. I wanted to get into a couple of instances where you found a 90% fat to be helpful, and how long does that period usually last?
To me, that's almost a fat fast. So,
Yeah, I agree.
I'm fasting. I would say somebody who, I've literally gotten people out of a panic attack by shoving fat in their mouth. So if you are if you're having, I don't know, psychotic episodes or something, or you're, that would be definitely something I would recommend for 2 weeks.
It's especially helpful in severe anxiety or mental crisis.
Definitely.
Okay, awesome. And so a fat fast, we have some stuff about that where you're using egg yolks, butter, lard, animal fat trimmings, and just working with that. How long is it generally safe to, what are some of the downsides in continuing forward with that? Will you feel it?
I wouldn't do more than 3 days. You
Gotcha.
do need to, all enzymes are made out of protein.
That's right.
So, there's so much stuff that's made out. We need our body won't function if we don't have an enzyme. So they're catalyzing every process in the body.
What do you think about people that are using an alternate day fasting, but it's fat fast? So they're doing
I
fat.
like fasting, Emily.
No, fat.
I don't know. I haven't used it.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of trending in the space right now that the high fat days and then alternating your days back and then with the sardines. Any thoughts on the sardine trend?
Sardines are good because I don't know. I live in Italy and the sardines that come in olive oil are not olive oil. It's actually 80% safflower oil. So I'd make sure that you get them in water, and then the tin that they're in, what is that lined with? That's usually lined with substances that possibly have plastic in them and may have phthalates. So I think that I'm not a big fish eater. I live in Italy and I live on the water and I never feel satisfied when I eat fish.
Yeah, if I eat fish, I have to eat beef with it.
Yeah.
I'll just be starving. The same way with chicken and poultry. It's like, I like it, but I can't eat it alone. It has to have
My husband can eat a half a chicken and I'm like, I need my steak.
Yes.
I will have to eat something else again after if I do that.
Yeah, I think people are on the kind of the omega road when they're thinking about these things, right? So there's
I think we get plenty of omega-3 from the meat we're eating. Yeah, I do. The DHEA, EPA, we're getting it from the meat we're eating. And I think that you absolutely, if you like sardines, you can eat sardines. I mean, a nice French thing is anchovies and butter. Of
Yes.
course, on little pieces of toast, but you don't have to eat pieces of toast, but
I tried it and I had not had anchovies, and whatever I ordered came in like a 6-pack, and they have these bones in them and they're just like this nasty tasting, like, oh, I just wasted 6 cans.
yeah, well, we used to, we obviously when we lived in the north, and we would get tons of anchovies. And it was the cheapest fish because Italy's taxes for fish are really, really high. So the meat is so much cheaper than fish, even though I'm right on the sea. So we ate lots and lots of fresh sardines and anchovies for a while. In Liguria in the north, it's one of the main things is to stuff them, but there's always going to be a carb involved, or grilled is, I guess, is nice, but never as satisfying as meat for me.
Why is this idea that carbs are helpful for certain periods, certain times of the month, certain
Oh,
hormonal? What's this based on?
this is based on the tests from the research papers from the 80s, where they saw that people had lower T3 when they starved them. They put them on 800 calorie diets, and when they added more carbs in the form of calories, the T3 went up. But they also had one test where it was high fat and the T3 did not drop. So it's basically you're starving people, they're on a hypocaloric diet. So your T3 is going to go down because you can't build anything if you don't have any nutrients. And it's those damn papers, and they just keep coming back. It's
Mm.
just not true.
That is so good to hear, because yeah, it's prevalent in the space right now. And so, well, and it has
It's
been
always been in the thyroid community, and you got to have your carbs to do what? No, you don't need them. You don't need them.
oh, that is music to my ears, because we'll even have people that are like, so they'll go into this territory of like, well, increase your animal food carbs. So, to go into yogurt and go into milk and go into scallops or something. And so
Yeah,
this,
seafood, shrimp, and squid, and they have a higher carb content than beef will, for instance. But there's nothing else in them. I mean,
right.
it's octopus is big here. It's like the favorite food of where I live is octopus, grilled octopus, raw octopus. They go and they pick them from the rocks and they eat them raw after they've beaten them for hours to tenderize them. But it's just unfortunate that it keeps coming back like a bad penny. It's really.
Yeah. So the lesson is it's under eating. This whole thing that they're coming in and trying to fix with carbs, there just wasn't enough nutrients. It wasn't enough energy. There's that.
Right, they weren't eating enough fat. They were afraid to eat fat because of maybe they put on a few pounds when they went high fat carnivore because the body was trying to restore itself. You have to give it time. It's a long path. It can be a long journey, as people say, but if you have, I mean, I think that people need to look at the science, and unfortunately so much of the science is crap. So yeah, it's hard, but you do not need carbs. Cycling women don't need carbs. Don't need carbs at a certain time of your period. No, you don't. You need more fat.
Love it. Oh, that makes me so happy. I'm going to be happy all day now. Do you ever measure your ketones, and do you think that's helpful for people? Is that something that is?
I used to, and I did for a little bit a few months ago, just to sort of do a test on cortisol. You're always going to have a higher morning blood sugar and lower ketones because during the night, your liver is producing a bunch of sugar so you sleep. So, the brain is doing a ton of work during the night, restoring itself, shrinking and expanding. And so, I would recommend measuring after a fatty meal, after lunch, an hour after lunch. I would not measure in the morning because people get freaked out because they have low ketones because of gluconeogenesis. But I don't measure now. And I don't necessarily, I will do it. I will recommend it when there are anxiety and mental health issues. Then it's important to see.
I'm hearing you loop back to this. So in certain cases when they need instant calm, that's where you're saying a high fat
Yeah.
fast or 90% fat is going to be
Yeah.
super therapeutic.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing this too with a mental health piece that could be an instance where
Brain.
looking at your ketones could be
Definitely. And also Parkinson's or any kind of neurological issue, you need to stay in a higher range because your brain just really needs those ketones.
When you say a higher range, is it kind of like 2+ areas, what you're thinking?
Yeah, I wouldn't go higher than that. I would never
Yeah.
run. No, yeah.
And then are there, do you see folks that are just having this from a dietary situation where they're playing with their, macros and fat and things like that? Do you see
Mhm.
ketones that get to a high point that you're like, stop, 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 alert, alert?
I would ask them, are they eating? Are they running too much? Are they exercising too much? I mean, we know that you can not eat for 3 days and you'll have incredibly high ketones, but that's not good.
Right. Too many
Stress
other.
response will
Too
be
many
the
other things.
stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned sleep. Let's go through some sleep tips.
Oh, okay. Well, just the usual: cold, dark, can't see your hand. I recommend that people get away from all their devices by 9. Definitely have to turn off their phones and iPads and yeah, read a Kindle or make love to somebody.
Yeah. Nice little wind down before you go. I love it. Oh my goodness. So I'm just looking through these. Oh, what do you deal with people that just can't stay on track? That there's maybe an addiction component to non-carnivore foods and they're stumbling. And what how do you help those people?
Any addiction is an energy issue. So it's going to be cortisol and thyroid. If you cannot make energy naturally from the food you're eating, it's because the little girl that my daughter had substance abuse issues. For 10 years, she was in rehab. She got off of everything 3 years ago. She put on a bunch of weight and she went carnivore a year ago. And now she is feels the happiest and the best she's ever felt all her life. So I remember her hiding candy in her pillow.
Yeah.
In her pillowcase.
Yep.
So I don't like the word addiction. To me, it's an energy deficiency. You're not able to make energy. So you are craving any way to feel alive. Some people have to run marathons to feel that way. Some people have to eat sugar to feel that way. Some people have to take drugs to feel that way. But it always comes down to adrenal or thyroid.
That's amazing. So we're just going to substitute this term and we're going to say, okay, the addiction, whatever, we're going to say energy deficiency. That's where it's at right there. And so it's having a smooth system that can, switch, right? This metabolic switching, this gluconeogenesis or whatever, this is kind of part of how this body is utilizing energy. How long does it typically take for that to smooth out?
Well, then it depends on stress. So somebody finds out their family member died in an accident, or they will absolutely crash and they will reach for carbs, or even like my daughter, alcohol did for years. But you don't undo. The important thing to remember is you're not undoing all the healing you've done by eating crap for 2 weeks. You're back into ketosis in 24 hours and boom, you feel so much better. I mean, I hear that all the time.
It's fixable. It's fixable. And
It's fixable.
yeah, I love
Don't
that.
beat yourself.
Oh, that is so powerful. And you can feel it when you have this body awareness, this mental awareness, and something goes sideways and the food goes sideways or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's such a immense thought. The thoughts change, everything changes.
Yeah.
And it's inflammatory, right? Could we say that this is inflammatory thought process? And so, but you are right, like that turns around. So get those fats going back in, nourish, don't restrict. I think one of the worst things people can do if they have binge or, go into the carbs or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, to eat less. Yes, that would be terrible.
No, no. And so it's eat more to get that energy situation going really, really well. Okay, I'm just going through this. Oh, okay. I have questions about your writing. So you're such a great writer, so passionate. I just have to keep on holding this up over and over. You can just hear your heart and your anger. And
Yes.
you were not afraid to write from a place of anger and
I
injustice.
got a lot of crap for that
Oh, did
from my
you?
male colleagues. Yes, they said it was a rant.
It was
Um, oh,
okay, I
yeah.
see a little bit. Is there a problem with that? No.
Yeah, what's the problem with that? Yeah. Yes, I got that from my mom. My mom was a journalist, and well, I got going for the truth from my mom. She was a journalist, and she was a journalist at the time when there weren't many women journalists. And she always wanted to go to Vietnam to make a name for herself, but she couldn't because she was a single mom with me. So she would go around Europe covering student demonstrations, and of course I was left at home. But she was amazing. They called her Nancy Drew. She would just get in her little VW and go down to see what was going on and write about it. And so that part of me was always there, the writing part. And then I got a lot of, when I went to, my mother moved to Germany when I was 2 with my dad, then they split up. I was the American kid. And then I went back to New York to city, and I was a German kid because I had a German accent because that was the first language I learned. And then I went, so I've been around bullies a lot. And I wanted to be Bruce. That's why I wanted to be Bruce Lee when I was a kid, because I wanted to defend not just other people, but, myself and other people. And I felt really strong for some reason. And about that, like I could defend other people. So that's what is the voice in my writing, me trying to, it's for my daughters. I've got 2
That's right.
daughters.
That's right. Yeah,
And I can't get that, the next book, absolutely when I can, but I'm working a lot and it's hard to write it well. It takes a lot. The research is done, but
no, you can see it and hear it and read it all through it. And this one is so focused. It's focused on menopause, but when I did a book study in it, I did, we covered all this. This was for men. This was for
yes,
women at
yes,
any
yeah,
age, because
exactly.
it was every bit as much about the pattern. And when you see the pattern of the masses of the people for the benefit of who, but it, like you wrote about it from the menopause perspective, from, here's, take a look at this, and do you see the pattern? Now take a look at
Right,
this.
exactly.
And so I think that that's where that boldness sort of came out of. But it was as eye-opening as it was for pattern recognition.
Mhm, mhm,
As
yeah.
it was for each individual issue that you address. I was like, this is
Mhm.
insane.
Yeah, people have to, if people can see for themselves, then what we were talking about earlier about policy and
Yeah.
how to make it sustainable, if they can see the pattern, then they will questioning authority. You have to, I mean, I was listening to the Clash, and my friend, other kids were listening to pop. So I've always sort of gone the other way than everybody else was going. So I've always been kind of like that. But I think that if you can see the pattern, you will question authority, and you will say, hey, so maybe I don't need carbs because this, and that person is gaining that by saying that.
Beautiful. What is the theme of the next book? I think I know, but tell me.
Younger women. Yeah, I was the whole adolescence, because it all starts in adolescence. It all starts in adolescence. I mean, it starts in the womb, but it starts even before that because it's epigenetics. But how women, we got the short end of the stick all the time, dietary and medically. And I'm horrified by some of the medications that antidepressants for children, the pill for girls now, instead of ADHD, the boys get ADHD and the girls get the pill to address their behavioral issues. That's starting at 9. Sad.
Absolutely. And I think that this is going to be a really important book because we are fierce in our mothering. You are a fierce mother, a fierce grandmother, continuing that, tradition on. And so sometimes I think that writing to those issues, if we can save our daughters and sons and help our daughters and sons understand true health and to not be played and to not be subject to the message that the culture is sending them.
Mhm.
Like for some of us, that's more motivating. We'll do things for our kids that we wouldn't do for ourselves. Uh,
Yes, 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 but we're saving the world by helping our sons and daughters see this, because depression, we're always talking about how depression is such a big deal, it's increased during COVID, and I live in Europe, and it's pretty frightening for me to see all these shootings and the stuff that's going on in the US. And when Columbine happened, I thought, oh, these kids are on antidepressants. It changes your brain. It changes makes you, boys are more likely to be suicidal when they're on antidepressants. Girls are more likely to be I write that in my book. So to get people to eat right, and during their adolescence, we're saving the world, because when they grow up, they will be good people.
Beautiful. Let's get these off of these substances and get them to an energy healthy mind. And
Yes, exactly.
that energy
Energy.
healthy mind that can do that, then that frees up your life energy for your work and for
Yes.
the most important things that need to be attended to. So absolutely beautiful. Okay, well, where can we find you? What's exciting coming up next? And yeah, just tell us where people can get in touch with you.
Okay, well, I have my Instagram channel, which I'll try to get back to soon. I have been babysitting for 2 weeks, so my grandson. And my website, elizbright.com. Um, I don't know when I can get the book done, but so I'm not gonna say it's out there soon, but other than that, I'm just plugging along.
Oh my gosh, the message is getting out there. As long as that message is getting out there,
Yes.
it's so incredible. I saw you had at least 2 episodes on KetoCon that you were featured on, right? 2 different panels.
Yeah, the female carnivore women's panel, and yes, yes.
Yeah, I have, fingers crossed. I know it's such an expensive trip to make and, but to me, I'm like, boy, main stage carnivore women, more of that. It's just,
Definitely, definitely. That's what you were talking about before, how to make it sustainable and how to get the message out. It was really important. And it was so exciting to have it standing room only and everybody saying it should be downstairs in the main room, because it was so important. Because women need to hear that they need to eat meat and fat.
they are energized and enthusiastic for this message. And for us to see at KetoCon, anytime carnivore represent, all the cheers came out. Anybody that's an influencer in this space was just so encouraged to see like people are actually changing their life. They would not be so passionate unless they were having huge life transformations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was incredible. And it was true. We were a packed house. And I think that anybody that's on this expert level panel teaching, sharing is going to be out there more and more. I'm looking forward to that from you, Dr. Bright. Like I'm hoping to see you presenting at more and more things and as our life allows and, with all of this. But thank you for your friendship and for your truth telling. And your fierce defender. You are a defender. You came to that naturally. I hear that was part of your whole journey with the martial.
Yes.
I see that, and it is just an encourager to so many of us. Thank you for taking this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily. It's good to talk to you.